Today on Locked On Women's Basketball, we talk to Jackie Powell of the Next and get into everything New York Liberty training camp, as well as a few roster updates from the WNBA throughout the last 3 days of training camp. We're also going to get into the growing injury problem amongst women's sports in general, off of the news that Georgia Amoore tore her ACL in Washington Mystics training camp earlier this week. So thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm Chelsea Leite, and I'm joined by Jackie Powell, another one of your hosts here on Locked On Women's Basketball, and also my colleague at The Next. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jackie. How are you doing?
I am well, and Chelsea, it is my pleasure to come on and give some New York Liberty updates, in addition to talking about what's going on with the Washington Mystics, because that is something I'm very interested in when it comes to their injury history. But anyway.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a little bit. But like I said, we're going to start with New York Liberty training camp because if, people listening aren't aware, you write on the New York beat and you live in New York. So you've been there in person at New York Liberty training camp, which seems like a lot of fun. I mean, that team's been like a lot of fun for the past few years to follow from afar. So I'm sure training camp is fun to be at. But I'm curious, just give us an update on because this is the first time we're seeing this team together since they won the championship. So what's the energy been in training camp so far?
The energy has been very focused. I think that is sort of a word I would use. I mean, there is a desire throughout the players there, the coaches there. They are striving for excellence and evolution. They want to evolve. And that starts in how their roster has sort of changed. And it starts with the fact that their coaching staff has changed. When you talk about the new additions to the roster, obviously the team traded for Natasha Cloud. Maureen Johannes is returning this year. She was with the team last in 2023, sort of that first year of the New York super team era. That was the first year of Stewie and JJ. And you also have Izzy Harrison, who is new. I expect her to make this roster, and she will be a reserve big that just makes sure that Stewie, Niara, and JJ are as healthy as they can be, especially at the most important moments of the season. So and then on the coaching side, you have Sonia Rahman, who is joining this staff. She has one of the most fascinating stories, and you can listen to that story because our own Howard Megdal spent a pod on this show talking to her and getting into her basketball mind. I mean, she was the head women's basketball coach at MIT, and then the Memphis Grizzlies hired her, and she was with them for a bunch of years. And so that sort of goes along this whole concept of evolution. They also hired Andrew Wade as their director of player development. He came from the Washington Mystics. And he also came from Unrivaled. I think it was interesting. I was talking to Rebecca Gardner, and she was like, yeah, we have spoken about a dynasty. That is something we have talked about, the desire for that. And I said, yeah, I guess this team wants to prove that it isn't a one-hit wonder. And I said to her, yeah, the Chicago Sky of 2021, that was a one-hit wonder. The Washington Mystics of 2019, I mean, Natasha Cloud was on that team, another one-hit wonder. And so she looked at me and she was like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. And I'm like, well, I'm a pop music fan, so that's why I brought it up. But she's like, you're absolutely right. She's like, yeah, no, we don't want to be a one-hit wonder. We want to prove that this this is sustainable and that we are an organization not to be messed with. And, we are an organization at the top of the league. They want that continuity.
Yeah. That's awesome. And, it's nice to see that continuity happening in a league. And I mean, next year is kind of going to be a test of that, obviously, with all of the free agency. But I mean, it's nice to see that the New York Liberty are going into the season like focused, healthy for the most part, but ready to go in. And I mean, right before we go to a break, I know you've been updating about like injury status and stuff like that. So I know, Brianna Stewart wasn't playing. Is there like an update on her? Is she going to be good to go for the beginning of the season?
So Stewie has been limited in practice just because she's still recovering from her surgery, which she got, I believe it was March 13th, if I remember correctly. And it was essentially like a shaving of the meniscus. For Benijah Laney-Hamilton, it needed to be repaired. But when you have a shaving, it's, you're just sort of cleaning up the meniscus, which, caused her a lot of knee swelling. And she believes, and there is a viral video on social media where she was talking to Sue Bird, and you could sort of read their lips. This was after Game 5. And she was like,
Okay.
yeah, I think it popped, referencing her knee. And so, so this little cleanup sort of came from, Stewie doing whatever she could do to bring them a championship. I've spoken to a orthopedic surgeon that I'm in touch with that, has no relation to the Liberty, but just has a knowledge of
I love that you have an orthopedic surgeon on retainer. Like, that's just, I love it. I need one of those. So yeah, anyway, continue.
And what she explained to me is that, by the time the season starts, Stewie should be very close to 100%. So that could mean she may, be limited for bunches of training camp. Stewart did tell us actually that she looks to be integrated more into practice next week, as the Liberty will have their first preseason game against the Sun. But I wouldn't be surprised if, just like in 2023, the Liberty they use her sparingly in the preseason and in training camp just because they want her to really get back to her base, and they don't want to rush her. Because in 2023, she came over from like a full season in Turkey, and they were very, very cautious about like letting her body recover, and she didn't participate in any of the preseason in 2023. So I expect them to be very careful with her. I mean, I think Niara Sabally, there was a little, a pre ramp up type thing with her because she was also in Turkey, but now I think she's a full participant. Izzy Harrison missed some of practice yesterday. So, it seems like there are little things that have been going on, but besides Benijah Laney-Hamilton, not a lot of major injuries as of now. Knock on wood or whatnot.
Yeah, everything around. Yeah, and I feel like that's a good place to kind of take a break. But when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about injuries. I mean, there was big injury news in the WNBA when we're filming this on Wednesday, and it's a topic that I've been interested about and doing a lot of research on. And I know you have an orthopedic surgeon on retainer. So obviously you have been talking about it a little bit more, but we're going to get into just like injuries in women's sports and what's being done about it and why it's happening, and talk about a few little trends in the WNBA in particular. So stay tuned for that. This is Locked On Women's Basketball. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with the Fire TV Stick 4K device. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Limited with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. And, you know, I'm someone who likes to game too, but, I'm here, I go, away to my hometown, traveling, whatever. And sometimes it's hard to bring that, bring a whole console and a charger and all of that and, your controllers. And so Amazon Fire Stick makes it easy because you can just bring the stick, bring your controller, and you have your Xbox wherever you want. And, as someone who writes about basketball and now 2K NBA 2K now has all the WNBA players and teams as well, so it's really exciting to be able to play that from wherever. So head to amazon.com/fire TV locked on to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, we are back with Jackie. This is Locked On Women's Basketball if you're just tuning in, but we are talking about injuries, the unfortunate part of women's sports. And so if you're watching this, we're filming this on Wednesday. So this morning on Wednesday, the Washington Mystics sent out a statement that Georgia Amoore, the rookie that they drafted 6th overall in the WNBA draft, just like literally a few weeks ago, suffered an ACL tear during practice on Tuesday on the 3rd day of WNBA training camp, which means that she'll be out for the entire season and likely won't be able to play basketball again until the beginning of next WNBA season. So if you follow women's sports, you definitely have started to probably see a trend in these injuries, ACL injuries, ligament injuries. I mean, we were just talking about Benajelani Hamilton missing the season, having to repair her meniscus. Stewie just got, a procedure to repair her meniscus. Juju Watkins is out with an ACL injury. Nika Mule, Jordan Horston, Paige Beckers had one a few years ago, AZ Fudd. And I mean, when you expand to soccer, to other women's sports, like these injuries are so common. And so a few months ago, I decided to tap into a little bit of research. And it turns out that like women are, I think, 2 to 6 times more likely to have ligament injuries because of the way that the female like hormone system works. And essentially, like to explain it in terms that like make sense to me, the way that hormones in the female body work, it makes your ligaments and your muscles a little bit more loose. And it's supposed to help with pregnancy, which I mean, sure, biology, whatever, but it makes it hard for athletes because then you're more susceptible to these injuries. So, I mean, that's just like the very surface level explanation on why these women end up with a lot more injuries. And I mean, I've written a little bit about it and done some research in terms of looking at a few base studies, looking at what they're doing to try and, help this a bit more. And I think the big thing is that women's sports health research, like when it comes to sports medicine research, that's primarily been done on men for a very long time. And I think we're finally getting to the point where women's sports are having this big boom and people are realizing that, female and male bodies aren't the same and there's different hormones and therefore you have to do different sports medicine research, different training plans, and, just approach it in a different way. And I mean, we are in this world where like gender and sex is like this big ambiguous thing. And I think you and I can agree that like there's a huge social conversation on that. But there's also the fact that like when it comes to anatomy, like there are differences that you need to account for when you're making training plans and when you're, trying to protect these athletes from devastating career ending or career holding injuries that are going to affect them. And so I was really happy to see just this morning that FIFA is launching a study. They're going to pay for a study to figure out how women's hormones and the menstrual cycle in particular is affecting ACL injuries, particularly in women's soccer. But this research is definitely going to help basketball players, definitely going to help hockey players because, we've seen it. I mean, Natalie Spooner, who plays for the Toronto Scepter, she had an ACL injury last year. And it's like every women's sport, this is truly becoming an issue. And so I'm definitely excited that there's more funding being put into sports medicine research specific to the female body and specific to the injuries and the things that are affecting these athletes, because I mean, they're money makers at this point. And, people, I know they're human first, and obviously we want everybody to be healthy, but, brands and teams and franchises are obviously going to keep their best interests at heart. And that, so I mean, if that's the case, then you want to do research on this and you want to make sure your athletes are healthy. But on a human level, like, these athletes deserve to have research and training plans and recovery that is tailored to their bodies, and not just, oh, this is what we do with the men, so this is what we're going to do with the women. So anyway, this is stemmed, I mean, from Juju's injury, and I mean, we're talking about this because Georgia Amoore had this injury today. But I know you had some thoughts. You have a really cool chart to show. I know you have some thoughts about like trends in the WNBA specifically. So I'll throw it to you, and yeah, just give me your thoughts on this topic in general, and how we've been talking about it.
So here at Locked on Women's Basketball and the Next, we have a colleague, Lucas Seehofer, who I'm sure some of you who have been listening to the show for a long time have heard Lucas speak about his work. But essentially what he has been doing, this will be his third season doing this, is he tracks all WNBA injuries of all types. And he tracks the body parts that these injuries are to. He tracks the teams they're from. He tracks the amount of games lost. And so in looking at that, you can really start to see trends. And, the common wisdom has always been, with injuries, it's really about luck. And to a degree, it might be, but also if things continue to trend in a certain way, it might not just be bad luck. And so I want to show you all what exactly I'm talking about when it comes to Lucas's work and the Mystics and their issues over the years.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to share my screen with everyone.
So if you're listening on like just audio, we're going to show Lucas's tracking chart here that he has made. But yeah, I think another thing to add is that, like, looking at these trends too, a lot of these teams, we're at a weird point in the WNBA where a lot of teams are investing a ton into player recovery, and some teams are still kind of lacking on that. So I think that's a huge part of this.
Correct. That is a huge part of this. So now that I have the chart up for those of you on YouTube, and I will say exactly what I'm referencing for those of you listening rather than watching. So here you have the Washington Mystics. I've highlighted them. This is Lucas's cumulative chart. To be clear, this does not include 2025 yet. So this number will be even higher than it currently is. But over two seasons, in 2023 and 2024, the Washington Mystics have had 56 total injuries. That is the most out of all WNBA teams. Who comes closest? The Phoenix Mercury, which is sort of surprising. But the point is that Washington is sort of in a league of their own, and I don't think that's a positive thing. I mean, when you look then at total games lost, so here 314 is the most. That's the Los Angeles Sparks. So that does not come as a shock as well, because the LA Sparks have received a lot of criticism when it comes to their lack of proper facilities for their players. And usually facilities and investment in player health and player performance staffs, that's usually quite linked. Not always
recovery
linked,
equipment.
Yes. And so that is why I have a lot of concern about the Washington Mystics. Those of you who heard me on my show that I host, Bring on Kareem Copeland, where we talked about Paige Beckers and why she was being compared to Eli Manning, one of the concerns about Beckers and the Dallas Wings is just that Dallas is also one of those franchises that does not have its player health and safety infrastructure like some other teams in the league, like in the Liberty, like in the Lynx, like in the Seattle Storm. So that's really, you have that group of teams that is really lacking when it comes to doing things that can make some of these injuries preventable. I can tell you all that in the case of the Liberty, they have technology that allows them to track a player's bandwidth. And so it sort of says, okay, when a player should maybe take it easy one day, when they can do more work. There is science in the player performance that is very advanced, and it helps these teams manage their talent and their humans in a much more thoughtful and also just with a more of a regard for their health.
And I
So
mean, it's extremely accessible technology too. I mean, not accessible, but like you think about things like Aura rings, like those. And for anybody who doesn't know what an Aura ring is, it's like those rings, and they track like your sleep and your health, and they give you. You know, I've heard people who say they that technology can like tell you you're getting sick like before you even feel symptoms, like stuff like that. So it's not like these teams don't have access to this technology. It's like pretty widely accessible technology.
it's accessible, but it requires investment. And
Yeah,
so
exactly.
you still have teams that have owners that are either not in the billionaire class of owners, or that they have
Yeah.
not received a cash inflow that can help them invest. I mean, the Connecticut Sun are another example of this. I mean, you think about when Curt Miller, now GM of the Dallas Wings, was coaching in Connecticut, you know, all of those teams were championship caliber teams, or most of them under Curt Miller.
Mhm.
But there was a key injury during many of those runs to the
Yeah.
playoffs and the finals that the Sun endured. So, you know, you have teams like the Connecticut Sun, the Washington Mystics, the LA Sparks, the Dallas Wings that are still really struggling with proper investment
Yeah.
into player health and safety.
Yeah, and I think, like, we talk about expansion a lot, and I do think one of the things the league is looking for when they're trying to vet these expansion teams is, like, are you going to put that investment into your players? And so, I'm glad that they're taking, a stand on it now, but I do think, like, we're at the point where some of these teams gotta step it up because these injuries are they I would say, like, more preventable than we're making it out to seem. Luck is definitely a part of it. Anatomy is definitely a part of it. But if you own a women's sports team, you need to be making sure that you have the ability to take care of these female athletes with whatever they need, whatever their needs are, whether it's, this research comes out and it says you need to change their nutrition. You need to change how they practice. You need to, adapt their training schedule to menstrual cycles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You need to be prepared to put the money into that. So, yeah, I think we're definitely about to see, I think the next phase of this boost of women's sports, I think, is going to be a boost of health, a boost of women's health in sports. And, hopefully that kind of is able to trickle down to some of the low like college athletics, even like just like daily life of all of us, because I know there's a lot of amateur athletes that could benefit from this research. I know there's a lot of leagues that don't have as much funding. I think about like rugby, I think about things like softball, baseball for women as well. So yeah, it's definitely a very important and interesting topic that I think that the boost of sports like women's basketball, women's soccer, women's hockey, they're just going to keep trailblazing and hopefully bringing more attention to these issues that are affecting, I mean, half the world.
Yeah, funding for research on women's bodies really matters, and
Yeah.
it's a bit of a difficult um, point here in the United States where funds for that research is being stripped away. And so it is our hope that that funding is saved, because it's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, and I mean, there's places like Europe is really trending a lot. A lot of the research that I did when Juju got injured in terms of women's health, a lot of it was coming out of Europe. Um, and places like the UK and
Mhm.
these big soccer hubs, like it's a lot about like these, but like that is going to help basketball players, that's going to help like I said, all these different other sports. So yeah, I'm glad that at least some country out there, they are putting funding into that, and I hope it kind of trickles down. I mean Canada, so I mean maybe we'll see that start to boost as well, because I know there's a lot of really great research that happens here as well. So yeah, I mean, let's take a quick break and then we're going to wrap this up when we get back. So stay tuned. This is Locked On Women's Basketball. All right, we are back here to wrap up this episode of Locked On Women's Basketball. Let's just dive in. Which preseason game are you most excited to watch now that we can watch them on TV?
Oh my gosh, yes. What a day. We can
What a
watch
day,
WNBA preseason games. No more cell phone live streams. Who would have thought? Yes,
right?
I'm referencing, it's almost been a year, and it was at, I think it was at
Yeah,
the Minnesota Lynx
it was
Chicago
Minnesota,
Sky.
Chicago. Shout out Allie. You got us with that one, girl. That was, and to think that was just a year ago, and now it's like, okay, the WNBA saw that and they were like, we lost out on a lot of money there. So
I mean, it was also just really embarrassing. And I think that was something that they sort of realized, where it's like this, and in the most professional leagues, preseason games are televised. I mean,
mhm,
you just look across the board, and that's sort of what the status quo is in professional sports. I mean, it was funny. Our own Terry Horseman asked Cheryl Reeve about this new development, and she was like, how about that? And she sort of had a very similar energy to the one that
yeah.
we're exuding here. And she said,
Oh
we
man,
know our fans for a long time have wanted this. And so I'm glad we're able to give it to them. I think that's
yeah,
really at the heart of it. You know,
yeah.
it's a
I
way.
remember. No, I was just gonna say, I remember last year that game that was streamed. Someone in the post game asked Cheryl about it, and I think she thought it was quite amusing that it happened. So yeah, it's definitely just proof that the league's growing. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you want to ask me what preseason game I'm most excited for, I'm going to be looking at the preseason games that feature an international national team. I mean, so if that
Mm,
means the Brazilian national team, if that
yep.
means, or actually, there's a team from Japan coming in. It's not the
Toyota
national team.
Antelopes.
Yeah, they're the Antelopes. It's more the Japanese professional league coming in.
Yeah.
It's just going to be really interesting to see who makes a mark on those
Yeah.
international teams, because in the
Mhm.
past, sometimes WNBA talent has come from those showings. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember like Rebecca Allen is a great example of that. She was someone who came over in an exhibition game that the Australian national team was doing. And WNBA talent evaluators, they liked what they
Oh,
saw.
yeah.
And Bill Lambier was like, we want to bring her to camp. And
Yeah.
so it's a cool way to sort of see global talent on a big stage. I mean, we're going to be able to watch all of this, and they're going to
Yeah.
be actual box scores. I mean, I will never forget, a lot of the times teams would do these like unofficial scrimmages that were sometimes closed to media. And so then I remember like someone, or maybe it was the PR director, sending like a box score to media members so we could just sort of see what's going on. You know, these WNBA courtside will be up and running. We'll actually see box scores. We won't have to get text messaged pictures of them. So those are all very important innovations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think another fun thing about this preseason is the like merging together of college and WNBA culture. Like there's, Camilla, like the LSU team, it's Angel Reese. They're going back to LSU for a game. It's against Camila Cardoso's Brazilian national team, but she'll be playing for the Sky. And then you have Caitlin Clark going back to Iowa, which that is obviously going to be a really fun atmosphere. And then the Liberty are going all the way to Oregon to play against this Japanese team for like a Sabrina Ionescu homecoming, which I think is really exciting because, her
and
tenure there
didn't. Sabally too.
Yes. Oh, and I forgot Sabally as well. But I think like her career at Oregon didn't end the way that she thought it would. So to now come back as a champion and be able to get the homecoming that she definitely deserved and play on that court and whatever, I think that's a really fun thing. So yeah, they're just finding these ways to like integrate the different communities. And I mean, for the past few years, we've had the Canadian games in the preseason. Now we've changed that to an actual in-season game, which is really exciting. Hopefully I'll be able to go to Vancouver for that. But yeah, it's a lot of excitement coming for the WNBA season. But yeah.
Don't forget Notre Dame too. So you have the Wings and the Aces.
Oh, going to Notre Dame. Yes.
You know, you have
so that will be fun. Yeah, Jewel Lloyd, Arike, and Jackie Young.
Yes.
Jackie Young, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that's a lot of really fun like community, integration between these two like very similar but also very different women's basketball sectors. So yeah. But anyway, that's all the time we have for today. So thank you so much, Jackie, for coming on and joining me. I know we always have a fun, interesting talk whenever you come on. But if you're listening or watching, make sure to check out Jackie's work on The Next and online. She'll be covering the New York Liberty all season long, and also just like general WNBA stuff as well. So make sure to check her out. And yeah, thanks for watching Locked On Women's Basketball, making us your first listen every day. Thanks, and catch us next time.